Well, guys, we're starting today's episode quite a bit differently. If you listened all the way to the end of last week's episode, you heard what's coming. If not, you're hearing it now. This will be the final episode of the Next Man Up podcast. Let me explain. Welcome in one last time, gentlemen, to the Next Man Up podcast. It's been an honor to have you along with us, whether short period or the whole ride. Thank you for being a part of this community that's been about being and raising healthy and godly men. 6 years ago, when God prompted me to begin to share my story around fathering and what I've done with, or at the time was doing with my oldest and have since done with my second son, I had no idea really what would happen, where this would go, what it might become. I had maybe some inklings and some initial thoughts, but the invitation for me was to just get started. And honestly, the podcast was not even on the radar screen initially. However, thanks to my boy Alen, it did not take long for that idea to surface and for us to just begin a conversation. And really what developed out of that conversation was a great journey for me, a fantastic journey with lots of learning and lots of growing. Maybe I've said this, maybe I haven't, but I think out loud. And so engaging in these discussions, whether with a co-host or with a guest, has been a significant opportunity for me to just keep growing and learning in this space of manhood and fathering and masculinity. And hopefully you've caught a lot of that along the way. You know this, we've met and engaged with some great men and some great women along the way over the last 5 years or so. And honestly, I've had fun creating and exploring and, as I mentioned, thinking out loud. And in fact, a good friend of mine mentioned recently that most of us think best out loud. And certainly that's been true for me. This has also provided a space for me to share my story. And not that my story is all that, but our stories are our own. And early on in my professional pivot, I made this commitment to God. I said, my story for your glory, which includes in part what I've done with my boys who are now men along the initiation, the rite of passage process, my own journey of really stepping into and embracing manhood and the awakening to what I was missing as a young man, and was able to pass on to my boys through the initiation process. And because of all of that, and then some, saying goodbye to this podcast and to you, the audience, this has not been a decision that I've made lightly. And while I'm grateful for the fantastic guests we've had, especially over the last 4 weeks, Matt and Monica, Kent and Ned just last week, if I'm honest, I've been needing to make this decision for a while now, and I really just didn't want to. What I mean by that is I just didn't want to say goodbye. And yet, it is the right decision for me to make. And here's why. My professional journey has evolved in some very positive ways in the last year in particular. And I have a really good opportunity that I am choosing to lean into. In fact, it's an alignment in mission, role, and team like I've never had before. I've had one or two of those in the last 2.5 decades of professional life, but I've never had all three come together in the way that they've come together in this opportunity. But it's requiring me to prune some of the good things like this in order to choose the best things. And that, gentlemen, is a hard choice, one that we continue to learn and grow into as we as we prune the good and choose to lean into the best. I want to narrow my focus and be fully engaged in this opportunity. Said differently, I want to be all in. I want to be all in on something like I've never been all in on. Again, with that alignment, mission, role, and team. And so, this Next Man Up season for me is coming to an end. In addition to the professional space, my sons are now 23 and 20. They've effectively launched. One of them is married. So I'm entering a different season of parenting. My daughter, who will graduate in May, will be launching soon. And so this season of active parenting for me is really coming to an end. And in reality, guys, I'm doing what I've helped so many coaching clients do. Identify where they are, where they want to be, and then move in that direction. Exercising some of my own self-leadership here. Where am I? Where do I want to be? And how do I move in that direction? And there's a third component really that is this. I'm cooperating with how things are playing out. Different than I thought for sure 6 years ago in embracing some of the professional decisions and paths that I took. But today there are opportunities in front of me that I couldn't see 6 years ago. And so I'm choosing to lean into those. I'm choosing to cooperate with how things have unfolded. And as such, it's time for this Next Man Up season to come to an end. So I'm celebrating, there's my word for 23. I'm celebrating what we've done and the impact that it has had. I'm also celebrating that you are here and that you're even hearing these words. 10 years ago, this would not have been on my radar screen. 7 years ago, even barely 6 years ago, this was not on my radar screen. So I'm celebrating that you are here and that you are hearing these words. And so that's the backstory. And so to celebrate in this final episode, we're bringing back all the voices that have helped make this show what it is. Alen, Auguste, Josh Wilson, and John Gregory, my 3 partners in crime over the last 5 years. I've asked each of these guys to answer 3 questions, which we will get to. Otherwise, we could laugh and tell stories for hours, and we don't want to put you through that. The questions are these. What drew you to the Next Man Up? What did you enjoy most or a favorite memory from the work or the podcast? And what's the impact you wanted to leave behind? Well, gentlemen, here we are once again. Alen, Josh, John, thank you for joining me for this last episode. First time all 4 of us have been together, and bittersweet for sure, but excited that you guys were, especially Alen and Josh, that you're willing to come back and hang with us for a bit. So Alen, I want to start with you, since you were my original partner from the very beginning, sitting out in front of that coffee shop. Yes, the beans to my rice. Yes, thank you. Sitting out in that coffee shop downtown Westerville, talking about this, and now here we are 5-6 years later, and celebrating what has been. And yet moving into new spaces. So I wanted to just start with you and this first question. So like what was it that drew you initially and in the beginning to the Next Man Up?
Oh yeah, totally. I can answer that. Before I do, thank you for having me back on, man. I appreciate that. Long time no see. Josh, good to see you. John, good to see you. And those who are listening, watching, it's really cool to be in your face for another session. Honestly, Mark, it started off with relationship. I think for me, it was 2 dudes just having a conversation about fatherhood and being a dad, and what does it look like? What does it feel like? And the more and more we talked, it was evident that we both at least came to the conclusion that there's no manual for this thing called fatherhood. And we both have like different backgrounds, and we're coming from different places on this journey. And yet we both understood that no matter where you were coming from, really the honest way to get some clarity on this thing called fatherhood and raising up your son to be the next man up, it's going to take fathers talking. It's going to take us digging into each other's brains, looking at the world together, and through a simple thing of conversation. And I love conversation. I like talking. I like talking with people. I like hearing from people. I like debating. But honestly, I like understanding. I want to understand. There's a lot of this world, and the older I get, the more I see that I don't know a lot. I know some things, but I don't know a lot, and that's okay. And it forces me to get with people and try to get a clearer picture of what this world is before me, right? And that includes being a father, and that includes raising up my son, who to me is very, very important. Very, very important. And coming from a background of not having like a biological dad figure in my life consistently, speaking into my life helped me to become a man. This area was really important for me. And so sitting down with you at the coffee shop talking, it just made sense, man. And it was a cool start to a new journey and adventure, which was really, really sweet.
Yeah, that's cool. I have reflected often on what we've been able to accomplish and do here. And you've probably heard me say this, but one of the things that I've enjoyed the most is capturing people's stories. And not just the celebrities, that have written the books or have sold the businesses or whatever, but like just the everyday people like us, capturing our stories. And your story, my story, they're so different. They're so different. And yet, to your point, we came together on a common idea, common desire. And I said this in the intro, but what I've learned even just recently is that the process of conversation really helps to draw out ideas and thinking. And I've always processed verbally much better than in my own head. And so just having that conversational approach and tone and goal was really beneficial to me. So how about for you a favorite moment or something that you enjoyed the most?
I would say probably like there was a guest, and I'm blanking on his name, and that's going to bother me. But he had this really cool like story, and he had this T-shirt that why am I blanking on your name? Because your face is right in front of me, and you probably got the shirt back there, don't you? As he reaches,
I don't have the shirt. I'm wondering if it's this guy.
Yes, this dude. Yeah,
Jay Cookingham.
He was a good dude. Like he was solid. Just talking with him, I felt like I don't know. I don't want to make this sound all gushy and whatnot, but my heart felt warm. Like conversating with him, and he seemed to be so genuine. And hearing his story and his journey with his kids, and just the genuine like push to say like I don't know everything, and that's where I sit. I don't know everything, but I'm just trying. That's all I can do. It's the only thing anyone can ever ask of me is just to try. And just a heart connection on that one episode, and I haven't talked to him since. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know where he's at and what's up with his life right now. But I remember the conversation really being an impact for me. And again, that's it. Like I remember I took a trip. I was going to Denver, and I met a guy who looked completely opposite than me again. And he reminded me of Jay so much when he's talking. The whole time he's talking to me, I'm like, dude, you sure we've never met? Never met? And he's like, nah, man, I don't know you. And I'm black, he's white. I'm wearing, I think I was wearing a Wu-Tang shirt and hoodie, and he's wearing like this NASCAR hat with like, you know, the lumberjack cut off sleeves vest. I mean, we couldn't be so much different, you know, and yet we walk up to each other in the airport going to get our bags, and he looks at me and I look at him, and I think it started with, hey, where are you coming from? And then next thing you know, it's into this awesome conversation of two guys. I mean, literally just met each other. Two guys who were sharing hardships as well as like celebrating moments of being a father to a son. In a young 20 something, my son is 20 and his son is 21. And we just got into this conversation, only 5 minutes. But in that 5 minutes, I promise you, I was talking to Jay. And I got the same feeling in my heart, the same, like, kind of like, we could be brothers. And we should be, because we're both in the same boat. We're trying to raise up the next man. And we're finding the pitfalls, we're finding the joys, we're finding the awesomeness, and we're finding the wonders and also the disappointing moments. And we had that thing in common, in that connection, right? And I felt that with Jay. And I would say his conversation with me and you was probably one of my favorite moments. But to be honest with you, Mark, it wasn't even on a podcast for me to be the top ultimate moment. The ultimate moment for me was going with you, because of the podcast, going with you to your mom and dad's spot and heading to their church, and just, man, you want to talk about like just being in sync, Wonder Twin Powers activate. When you and I were speaking together and sharing, I felt real sense of kindred. I felt like there was a purpose, and it was being realized for that moment, for in front of strangers, of what you and I were trying to accomplish, and just starting a conversation with people. What does it look like to raise up the next guy? You know what I mean? And that was dope to me. I really had a lot of fun. Your mom and dad are pretty cool. And your dad owes me a trip on snowmobiles, by the way. Okay. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Well, it's funny because a couple times a year, in just random conversations, my parents will run into somebody who was in that service, and they'll say, man, I still remember when your son and Alen came and talked, and like it was so good, it was so impactful. And man, that's been quite a few years now. That was BC, right? That was before COVID. Right. So it's been a few years now.
BC before COVID. Oh, I'm stealing that.
Yeah, but that's on the top of my list too, and just the chemistry and the difference. You know, like there's so much that could be said there, but differences don't have to divide. That's for sure. They can certainly unite. And I felt that unitedness and that chemistry with you. So I'm with you, man. I'm with you. So let me throw the last question at you. The impact. You know, when you look back on what you were able to do through this platform, what's the impact you hope that it had on those that have come behind or that have partaken in the content and the work that you were able to do?
I guess I don't want to sound selfish, but honestly, the impact started with myself. I think there's a lot going on in here, and to be able to sit down with somebody and just talk about something seriously dear and important, like to my heart, that was huge. I'm not quite sure how much we understand how important just being able to conversate with someone about not just the normal things of life. Like how's a football game, or how's a Did you see that golf game, or like positive weather, or man, my lawn needs a little extra work this week. It's like that's all cool, man. That's great, and we can talk about that, and I can get into some weird stuff with folks, like like diving into comics and sharing the different thread lines of different characters and different multiverses and all that jazz. That's cool, but honestly, man, when it comes down to it, I'm trying to talk about things that are seriously dear to me, and I'm not quite sure I we as a collective group of men on this planet, who are fathers, really talk about that the hard stuff of I don't know how to be a dad.
Yeah, yeah.
I got this little bundle, this little boy that I've been blessed with, but I am scared out of my brain. I'm scared that I'm going to fail. I'm scared that I don't have what it takes. I got lots of books to read from, but this is not cookie cutter. This is a live person,
Yeah,
with personality and dreams and fears and hopes. And I gotta lead this one. I do I have to do this alone? Are there other people who could stand up with me and help me? What are other people talking about and thinking about when it comes to being a dad and raising a son? Like all these questions were needed to ask, and I don't mind being the brave one to step up and go, let's talk. And also come from a standpoint of I'm just like everyone else, man. I'm just this guy from Columbus who was sitting at a coffee shop with another guy from Columbus, and we just wanted to start talking about raising kids. Like, how do we do this? I don't know you. You're different from me, but let's try it and let's see where it goes. And that impact, I think, hit me really hard in a good way. But I also feel like for those who are able to listen, I wanted that same impact for them. I wanted the aha moments. I wanted the I never thought about it that way moments. I wanted the, oh yeah, even though we're different people and we come from different backgrounds, we can still go and get a bite to eat and talk about the hard stuff, like the stuff that people don't want to talk about, or make it seem like there's a silver bullet that can heal and serve everything. It's not true. Like, we have to conversate. We have to walk with each other, left foot, right foot, through this journey of fatherhood. And I wanted to be a part of that and be and have an opportunity to impact other lives with that. And I got to. I did. For a couple of years. It was really cool, man. Like, it was really sweet. And even looking back, like there's moments that I think it revealed to me even after I stepped back from the podcast and from the operation. Like, there's still moments that are being revealed to me that have shown me how much of an impact we're actually making. Like, I was at a barbecue joint, and the lady at the counter knows me, and she used to work at the school, and her and her husband started this barbecue joint. And I go into the barbecue joint, and she starts rattling off like something that we said in the podcast. She was like, "Yeah, I was listening." I was like, "That was like a year ago."
Wow.
It's like, I know, but I just listened to it and really hit me. And I had my husband listening. He was like, "Yeah, man, them dudes are right. Them dudes are right." I was like, "What?" You know what I mean? It just blew my mind, like out of nowhere, someone was listening. That's impact. It brought that aha moment, or that question moment, or that wonder moment. And I have stories like that all the time. That's really cool. And so I think the impact has been really good. And I think it's doing at least what I thought we were trying to do, and it's happening. And that's sweet for me.
Oh, that's fantastic, dude. I love it. For anybody who's listening who has never been on radio or TV or podcast, and I've never been on TV or radio, but podcasting is a lot like it. You're speaking into a microphone, not knowing where it's going. And so to get those stories coming back is it's really meaningful, because you realize somebody is listening and they've processed something that you've said or shared with the content that was impactful. So I love to hear those stories.
Me too. Me too.
Okay, so let's bring in another voice. Thank you, Alen. So Josh, let's go to you next, because there was a little bit of overlap where the three of us were working together, and then Alen had his own opportunity present and moved in a different direction. And like, it was such a godsend to have you right there, stepping in and continuing on. And yet so different from me, but certainly quite different from Alen too. And so let me pose the question to you, same question. What was it that initially drew you into the work that we were doing?
There's a lot of stuff out there about manliness or manhood, and there's a lot of stuff out there about parenting. But there's very little that has to do with being a father to a son. There's lots of generic stuff. There's lots of self-help stuff, but there's not a lot of how do you parent as a father a son so that he becomes a man. That seemed really unique. And that was one of the things that I was really trying to figure out, because as I stepped in to the next man up, it was as I was starting my own family. So now my son is 4 and a little bit. I also have a daughter. But knowing that my son was coming on the way, when the opportunity presented itself, I had to pursue it. There's no way that I couldn't be part of that conversation, because I was trying to figure it out for myself.
Yeah.
And I have a really great relationship with my dad. And in many ways I am my father's son, but you can't just take advice from one source. So how do you take all this other writing and translate it into a guide for fathering sons? So for me, that's what Next Man Up was all about, and has continued to be all about. And I think it still continues to be a topic that's really lacking in our culture. We just don't have we don't have that input, and I think that's one of the things that I'm a little sad about with coming to the end of the run at the Next Man Up. But at the same time, like, these things live on.
That's right. That's right.
They don't go away. We have almost 250 episodes as of this recording. I think we'll be over 250 by the time it's all said and done. And for me, I think the reason why I ended up having to step back is because I had those 2 young kids that just took all of my energy, whatever I had left over. And I thought that I would be able to step back in. It was just unfortunate. I could not figure out how to make it happen. So yeah, I really have enjoyed being part of Next Man Up, being on the podcast. And I noticed when Alen left the show that we just had, like, a lot of things changed. Alen just brings so much energy and excitement to the conversation. And I love being able to talk with you again, Alen. It's been way too long. So there you go.
Agreed, my man. Agreed.
One of the things that I really appreciated, Josh, that you brought was the way you would question me. So Alen and I were throwing ideas back and forth, and we were questioning guests. But there was a transition when you came on to where you were, as that young father, curious, wanting to know for yourself, but also inviting me to be more vulnerable, to offer more. And so you drew some things out of me that wouldn't have otherwise come out, simply by turning to me. I'm in my space where we used to do it together. I can see you right here to my right. You would turn to me and pose a question. And what do you think about this? What did you do? How would you handle that? And the tone of our conversations shifted so that you were able to draw some things out of me that, like I said, wouldn't have otherwise come out. So that was one of the things that I really appreciated about what you brought. When you look back on your time, what stands out as a favorite or as something that you really enjoyed?
So the first time we talked was at a coffee shop, also in Westerville, about making a video of the presentation that you and Alen were putting together about creating a rite of passage journey for your son.
Yep, I remember it.
And we didn't do that. Instead, we did something I think was better, which was a not a live presentation, but a very carefully written class that we finally actually sat down and recorded. So the thing that we originally talked about, we ended up doing.
We got there
like 3 years later, and we got it done. And I think that was probably for me the most important contribution, the most meaningful contribution that I had to the Next Man Up, and in some ways, well, a lot of ways, that the Next Man Up made to me, because it's a clearly laid out process for creating a rite of passage journey. The thing that seems to be missing so much, and what brings up the question of like, how do I know that I'm a man, is that rite of passage journey. Either it's there or it's not. And that we can wrap up the work here with that still being available is really, really fantastic to me. And I love that we got to go up we shot it at Heartland, didn't we?
Yeah, that's right.
And we were in that cabin that they had, and I love the setting, and yeah, it was just, I love that project. That project was really fantastic, and I'm so glad we got to do that together.
We had the last guest, Ned Shout, that we talked to. One of his 2 words is create. He listeners will remember this. Rebel and create are his 2 words, and so we were able to create something like that. It was a creative expression. We brought something to life that hadn't existed before, at least in that form or in that fashion. And like, we couldn't have done it without you, man. There's only so much I can do on a little iPhone, and you had all the gear, all the technical expertise. It's I mean, you're prompting me to remember all the many times where I get to the end of a segment, I look up, you're looking at me like, nope, do it again. the energy wasn't quite right, the pace or the tone wasn't quite right. You're like, nope, do it again. I'm like, okay, I'm trusting the boss, the professional here. But it was cool to bring that to life and to have that as a resource that other dads can go through. That Forging Men course, it will live on. So impact then, when you look back, and maybe you've alluded to this already, but when you look back, what is the impact that you want to have left behind with your time here?
So I think for me, there are 2 things in terms of impact. And kind of like Alen, the first one's a little selfish in that there's now a resource that I can turn to that can help me be a father to my son that didn't exist before. And the fact that I got to be part of that and making that is pretty special. And I also think that resource doesn't just exist for myself. It exists for all kinds of men who are fathers to sons who haven't had a resource that now do. And we have 250 episodes that if you listen to an episode a week, it would take you 5 years to get through all the episodes of Next Man Up. That's pretty spectacular, man. Like 5 years of help that when you're done, you'll probably forget what you started with. So you can start over again.
Rinse and repeat.
So you go through like 4 cycles of it, and it might help you through the 0 to 20 year journey as you help your son become a man.
So good. It's funny you mentioned listening to the episodes, because I toward the tail end here, I've been thinking, I want to go back and listen to these, and not from the angle of producer, presenter, creator, but from the angle of I'm a dude. And what did I miss in those conversations that I could now take into my future to be and to do different? Like to your point, there's years of content that people can access, and you were a part of it. So thank you. John, let's pull you in. The last of the three, certainly not the least. And you know this. You and well, John and I have been friends for quite some time. But prior to joining this, you were helping me to move from maybe a bit of a dry spell in the creative process into something new. And man, it's hard to believe that wasn't even a year ago, but once again, the right person at the right time for what I needed to keep going and to see this thing to where it is today. That's too much preamble. Here's the question again. What was it that drew, besides my desperation and need for help? I'll just put those words right in your mouth. What was it that drew you into this podcast?
You know, I have so many things that are in my head that I have to be careful here. You know, like what you just said is I'm your hydration, I'm your Gatorade. You know, it's like
there you
that's
go.
just one thing. But another little plug here. I felt like the SEC needed to be represented in all this 5 years of work. So we got to get some representation into Big Ten land.
Okay, fair enough.
So,
should have seen that coming. There's always
all ulterior motive. It had nothing to do with you or fought. No, I'm teasing.
Okay. We'll check the sports reference box off. There's a couple more that we'll get to, but we'll check that one off for now.
Yes. Well, honestly, what you just said, I felt like there was an opportunity to support the work. And for those who don't recall, I'm not a dad, not married. So in the first episode that I was on, we had to sort of walk through that. Like, why is this guy on here? What is he bringing besides stupidity? So that supporting you, but also believing in the work we're all sons, and we have different histories with our fathers, and mine was unique compared to the other three of yours. So it's another opportunity to just tell somebody's story and a different lens coming from a pastor standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, just all those different things to partner with you. I don't know that it felt terribly different, just having my lens versus Alon's or Josh's lens, but I don't think it could help but have a different lens, but still support the work that Next Man Up was about.
Yeah. Well, again, it was significant in timing and what I needed. And the what you bring is different than what these other two guys bring, and it's different than what I bring. And so yet again, the differences drawing out the strengths and the best of one another, including the constant sports references and the jokes from left field that should have seen coming, but didn't see coming.
You never know.
Well, and so I've said this before, but I have a tendency toward serious and a little bit of an intensity in how I approach things. And you brought a lot of levity, which was good, and often missing in how I approach things. And so again, complimentary and drawing out the best. I know you don't have as much in the body of work as these other two guys, but when you look back
it's quality, buddy.
That's
quantity,
right.
It's quality.
Fair enough. So the quality work that you delivered, what stands out as a favorite memory or as something you enjoyed the most?
Well, two things. get a little personal here. I do some of my best thinking in the shower. So there would be often moments that I'm thinking either I just listened to an episode, or I know you and I were going to be talking about, some strategy about upcoming episodes. And I would think about, oh, this would be a good topic. And I'd have to really keep it in my brain before I could get out of the shower and actually go, put it in an email or text or something to you. So I remember doing that often. It came to you in all kinds of ways, text, emails, voicemails, whatever, just to get it out of my brain. I enjoy doing that, to be taking a conversation that I had with someone or just some insight to a story and thinking, how we're all guys, how is this relatable? And how could that be put into an episode that could be practical in nature and give us all something to take away with us, particularly in the lane of fatherhood. So it's also interesting to me to try to always set, when we're actually recording with a guest, mostly with a guest, of how do I input here what would help a father, because I'm not one. What's the question I could ask to try to bring it back to, all right, the dad who's listening and has the 14-year-old, how could this, whatever we're talking about, how could that help him? So that was just fun to me, to be able to think like that and, just see what came of it. And sometimes it was good. Sometimes it's like, that was a stupid question, but you just went with it.
I edited all out, the stupid questions.
Yeah, you edited me out. Yeah, there you go. I look back at episodes to see if one stuck out to me, just the names of them before we got on. And sure enough, it was, I'm not going to get his last name right, Jeff Fajan.
Oh, yeah. The music creativity guy. Yeah.
Remember when he was talking about his kid singing, and that he had recorded him singing Walk This Way?
Yep.
I'm like, we have to see that. I need video of that, because I need to see that. And sure enough, he sent it to us. It was delivered. Awesome.
Yeah. Jeff Fajan, I think it was. Fajan. It rhymed with Lion.
I'm from Alabama. Fajan sounds like Fajan to me.
Yeah. Well, it looks like Fajan too. Yeah. So it's that was a fun episode.
Yeah.
But to your first point, I don't know how many times we finished an episode and I'm like, dude, thank you for going back to the heart of this with that question. And I don't know if listeners realize just how many times it happened, but you were very intentional about the father, the manhood, the sonhood angle in your questions. And I appreciated it. Like I said, many times after we were done recording, I'd be like, that was a great question. You pulled us back in a way that I hadn't been thinking about, or I was focused on something else. So definitely appreciated that and many things in what you brought to this platform. So final question for you, impact. When you look back on the last year, what do you hope the impact is that you were able to create and leave?
I think I can narrow it down to just one thought, and that is, it doesn't matter what your station is in life. We can support each other. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be in the same shoes as the guy beside you. As Alen shared his story with the guy in the airport earlier, you don't have to look alike. You don't have to be from the same background. All of those things, we can be different, but we can support each other, and particularly as men. So wherever you find yourself, you can support someone, and you do need to be supported. So community is important. And I hope that in this, sort of fourth quarter year of Next Man Up, that we illustrated that that's important, and the impact that could have in our lives. Not honestly, I'll say a selfish thought. I didn't have to do this. What am I getting out of this, so to speak? But I got out of it the opportunity to walk alongside men who, one day may be great, and the next day they're like, what the heck am I doing? I'm a failure. All those different kind of thoughts and emotions that a dad walks through. So we can help each other. We can serve each other. And this podcast, as Josh said, you got 5 years of stuff here to walk with you. And that's great. I guess what I would hope that the impact would be is that guys find those other men in their lives that they are supporting and are being supported by.
I love it, man. That's good. Thank you. So I'm gonna take a turn. I'm not gonna answer the first question because that what drew me to this has been chronicled throughout in multiple ways. In terms of the second one, what did I enjoy? What were my favorite memories? Alen mentioned one. Josh mentioned one. I also alluded to what you guys were able to bring out of me, what you brought and what that brought out of me was really cool. And I know that's kind of a big general answer, but there were so many just different examples of how our differences complemented, and you brought things out of me that I would not have otherwise got to or thought was there. I would say with respect to the podcast, the one episode that stands out and will forever stand out for me is the chat I had with Morgan Snyder, who did a bunch of work with John Eldridge and Wild at Heart and that ministry. Just his grace and his wisdom just so touched me. And I'd been reading his book at the time, and we had a fun story to share about pocket knives, and it was just really, 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 really good. And each time I've re-listened to it, it's been a couple of times, it's like, oh gosh, that was so good for me. So like there's kind of one of my selfish moments. It was good for me. And what a cool honor it was to be able to have that conversation with Morgan for this audience to put it out there. In terms of impact, it's funny that each of you mentioned something that was very specific to you, and I'll mention that as well. I'll start there. I've been able to chronicle my story, and there's been a lot of growth from the beginning of the first episode or our first workshop that we did, again in Westerville. Spent a lot of time in Westerville. To now, there's been a lot of growth in Mark. But even if it's just for a resource and a legacy for my two sons and a future son-in-law down the road, it's been worth it. That family legacy and being able to capture a little bit of who Dad is and pass on a little bit of who they can become from who Dad is and was, that's one of the things that I am intentionally leaving behind as impact. The other two are closely related. Wrestling with this question of what does it mean to be a man, and not ignoring it, not overlooking it, embracing it. It's hard. It's big. We've offered some thoughts here for sure. But inviting guys to wrestle with that question and to raise the bar so that we can, I'll get this in one more time, we can move toward healthy and godly manhood in how we live and how we're raising our boys. So what does it mean to be a man? What wrestling with that question, I hope, is an impact we have. And then from the beginning, it was taking this tool of initiation or rite of passage. We've really used those interchangeably, and putting it in the toolbox of today's modern dads. So it's something that they can give to their boys, something that they didn't get from their dads by and large, but now have that tool that they can have in their toolbox to pass along to their boys. That's the impact that I hope we've been about and will be to come as this content lives on. So guys, thank you. Let me give you a chance to offer any more thoughts before we move this to a close one final time. Not that there has to be, but if there's anything pressing that you guys want to share, feel free.
I'm going to say thank you, Mark, for giving us all an opportunity to have a voice, to speak about this issue, or topic, not just with you, but with each other and to a broader audience. Because if it wasn't for you spearheading this and deciding to actually take action, instead of just talking about it, which I'm generally pretty good at just talking about things and not doing anything about it. Thank you for actually doing something and putting yourself out there and putting the energy in and spearheading it and making it a reality. So thank you.
You are welcome.
I'd add, Mark, it's been fun for me to watch you personally grow, actually. And, we knew each other before you started all of this. And so it's been fun to see you challenge yourself and be a model of what Josh just said to other men. It's like, okay, I can step out of my comfort zone. I can do something that I never would have thought I could do. And if that's an impact that people get, that's good enough.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to have seen that and look forward to what's next for you as you end this chapter. But certainly your story's not done.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you, G4.
I did all that. And then as far as those listening, I would like to say, like, this started with just a conversation between two men, and this is what we thought we could do, and it multiplied into the four voices you are hearing today. Like that, we're continually trying to conversate and figure this out, right? And like I want to send off to be, if there's people out there who are thinking the same way, and maybe you want to pick up where this is leaving off, I say go do it. I encourage you to do it. Matter of fact, I was listening to a line. I want to say, I think it was Kendrick. It was like he's like challenging someone to do what he's done but better, and it wasn't like no one can be better than me kind of thing. He was like, no, this is how it works. It's like we see something that really compels us to join, and then we take what we learn from that and we build upon it and we continue on. And then somewhere down the line, someone does the same thing with what we did. You know what I mean? And so on and so on. I challenge somebody to just pick up where we left off and do it better. Do things that and talk about things and bring people on that and dig into the areas of topics that maybe we haven't touched on, or go deeper into a topic. Like, do it better, and you be the next man up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I want to see it because I know that there's more heads out there who are thinking about this topic like we are, and can probably pick it up. So that's my send off for the world.
I love it. And with that invitation is this invitation, whoever that was for. If you need to chat, just hit me up, because would love to encourage and support in any way I can. Well, guys, thank you for this. Listeners, thank you once again for being a part of this community, for being with us, either from the very beginning or more recently. And if you've been more recently, you got a whole volume, backlog of content you can go back and listen to. But thank you. Thank you for being a part of this community that has been and will continue, even off the mics, about being and raising healthy and godly men. It's been an honor. It's been an honor to do this with each of you men on the screen, and it's been an honor to provide this for our listeners. And so we'll do this one more time, but in a slightly different way, until our paths cross again, everyone. Adios. To send us your comments or questions, you can email us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. The theme music is by Jacob Stanifer at Jacob Stanifer Music, And this show is part of the NRT Podcast Network.